Welcome to the 2010 MLG Dallas Bracket Show presented by Old Spice. I'm Shibby, and joining me today, as always, Dmaq and Chris Puckett. Guys, our players have worked all season long to get to this point, our national championships.
Yeah, Shibby, this is going to be the biggest tournament ever for a lot of these young guys. And not only that, it's the last Halo 3 tournament ever. So if you win this one, you're going down in the history books as the Halo 3 champion.
And you know, Shibby, history is nice, history is cool, but what about going home with $100,000, Puckett? That's a big deal.
That is a big deal. So it's going to be an awesome tournament. But before we get started on this tournament, let's take a quick look back at all of our bracket shows this season. It's been a memorable year, to say the least.
Cloud has been seen to take teams that haven't been that great and take them to the very top. Can he do that with this Instinct squad and bring Roy and Lunchbox their first victory? I don't think it's going to be here. I'm going to say Triggers down, but I will not be surprised if it was Instinct.
Give a big round of applause for Instinct, your 2010 Orlando champions.
And I'm just going to show up to Columbus to see if anybody could beat Instinct. No suspense here. Instinct's going to win this series.
We've been talking about it all bracket show. Instinct is the squad to beat.
Lunchbox going for 50, and there it is. Instinct takes down Final Boss Instinct, back-to-back champions. I think Purgatory's going to bring it. They're going to catch Carbon sleeping early. I'm calling Purgatory.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Carbon. I'm jumping on the Carbon.
My prediction's correct. It's going to be Purgatory.
With a quick 3-0 sweep, Purgatory takes down Carbon.
Whether it's Final Boss or Believe the Hype here, I think they're going to hand Instinct their first loss of the entire 2010 season.
Final Boss is going to take this matchup.
Hey, if Final Boss beats Believe the Hype to get into this position, they're going to be on such a momentum rush that they will be Instinct.
And here is the fifth and final flag cap. It's in the hands of Fear itself. Can he put it in? Oh! Final Boss, you're wrong. Look at over two. Look at that.
Yes, I'm calling Status Quo the second best team in the league, Puckett.
They are not the second best team in the league. They always buckle when the pressure comes on.
Saw Dynasty beating Status Quo 3-1.
Dynasty looking strong, taking out Status Quo.
I think FB continues to be the top dog in the game. They're going to win this matchup and get another first place finish.
All right, well, you know, I have to agree. I think Final Boss is the #1 team in the league.
Final Boss is going to win it.
Dmaq, you should be a musician after that display of piano skills right there. That was pretty good.
I'm pretty nasty.
And talented man.
All right, but seriously, guys, we've got some good matches to look forward to. The first being between our first-seeded Final Boss and our 8th seed, Carbon.
You know, Shibby, when you kind of look at this matchup, you look at Carbon as kind of being undeserving. They didn't place 8th in the past 2 tournaments. It hasn't really worked out for them yet. They find themselves here because of the point system. And yes, there is a lot of history between Carbon and Final Boss, but it doesn't look like we're going to see that juggernaut matchup here, Puckett. Final Boss just seems to be in another class, and Carbon, they're just lucky to be here.
Yeah, you're right. This is the most lopsided match in the entire bracket. Final Boss, they are on top of their game right now, winning back-to-back events. Carbon hasn't impressed me the second half of the season, or basically at all of the season. I think Final Boss is going to stomp out Carbon 3-0. Carbon, if they win one game, I think that's going to be a win in their mind.
All right, well, you guys both agree. Final Boss should be advancing this round. So our next matchup is going to be between our 4th seed and our 5th seed, Status Quo and Dynasty. Guys, what are we going to see this matchup?
Well, Shibby, I think this is our Old Spice swagger match. It definitely has to be. 2 of the closestly matched teams here. You have Dynasty, who went from 7th place back in Raleigh all the way up to 3rd place, only losing to Final Boss and TD back at DC. And then on the other side, you have Status Quo, who's been consistent all season long. These guys have 3 4th place finishes. I think that this match could go either way. If Dynasty's playing like they were on Saturday of DC, Dynasty's going to win this hands down. If Dynasty's playing like they were on Sunday of DC, Status Quo should be able to edge them out. You know, I'm banking on Status Quo, though. I have them moving on in my bracket.
When you look at this matchup, you look at Dynasty as a team that's really only played well one day out of this whole year, Puckett. And when you look at status quo, they've done it numerous times. I picked status quo as one of those teams to really take it to that next elite level back in DC. It didn't quite happen for them, but let's not count out everything they did in DC. For instance, the reason why Straight Rippin' isn't here is because of status quo. The way they were able to bounce back on Sunday, status quo has a lot of fight in them. They play with a lot of resilience. I see them bouncing back against Dynasty, winning this matchup, and moving on.
This is the first time that I think I agree with every single point you made.
Wow, and that's 2 in a row. So you guys, once again, both agree that status quo should be moving on here, right?
Definitely SQ.
Yeah.
Okay, so status quo is going to be moving on. Let's take a look at our next matchup, being between Triggers Down and Believe the Hype. Guys, who's going to win this matchup?
Well, Shibby, if you look at what happened in DC, Triggers Down stomped Believe the Hype on the main stage, 3-0 sweep in that series. But Believe the Hype, they didn't have a lot of practice going into the event. Triggers Down, they had a ton of practice. Now both of these teams are going to have a 6-team LAN before the event. I think that Believe the Hype is going to be much more prepared, but still, Triggers Down is just too practice for this BTH squad. They should win it, but BTH's talent, they could win a couple games. I'm expecting 3-1 TD.
Just a hint on BTH's talent. Demon D and Maniac, they won last year's national championship coming in as a 7 seed, which was absolutely incredible. But when you look at this Triggers Down squad, the way they played on Saturday, absolutely perfect halo. Sure, they didn't follow it up with Sunday, but I think TD knows that they could play at that level. They finally moved into that elite status in my eyes. I think Triggers Down is going to squeak by this one. They'll win this matchup.
All right, so Triggers Down, they're looking to be too powerful in this matchup. Triggers Down defeats Believe the Hype, and they'll be moving on. So that leads us to our final matchup of round 1. This one being between Instinct and Warriors.
Well, Shibby, when you look at Warriors, here's a team who's done very well all season, 3 5th-place finishes in a row now. And on the other side, Instinct, they've done a lot of work this season, winning the first 2 events, but they just lost the Darkest Hour in DC, a team that plays very similar to that play style of Warriors. You think an upset could happen here, Puckett? Because I certainly do.
Well, as we've seen all season long, upsets can always happen, especially when we least expect them. But Instinct, come on. Instinct versus Warriors. You got Instinct, who's won 2 events. They have Roy and Cloud on the team, who have both been MVPs twice this year. Elmite Warriors stepping up his game in DC. I love Warriors. I mean, they're the youngest team coming to the national championships. These guys have a lot of heart, but they don't have the talent that Instinct possesses. I think Instinct is going to have better teamwork here, and it's going to look a lot like the Straight versus Warriors matchup that we saw in DC. Instinct should come out with a 3-0.
Well, here's a little interesting bit. When you look at Warriors coming into this year's national championships, very similar to last year's Believe the Hype. Both coming in at the 7th seed, both making a lot of upsets happen all season long. It could happen. All I'm saying is I've seen it happen before. I saw it last year. It could certainly happen here.
You know, it could happen, but when I think of the top 3 teams, Warriors does not fall into that category. Instinct does.
Thank you, Shibby.
So Instinct will be moving on here. So that's going to do it for round 1. We'll take a look at round 2 after the break. Welcome back to our MLG 2010 Dallas Bracket Show, presented by Old Spice. Guys, we're now moving on to our round 2 of the National Championship Bracket, with our first matchup being between Final Boss and Status Quo.
Well, when I looked at this matchup in DC, I called this to be a possible upset, Puckett. I thought Status Quo would get past Dynasty. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. We never got to see the matchup. But when I look at it here, it could happen. Status Quo, Final Boss, they haven't met in quite a long time. Status Quo has great teamwork. They really show great support with all of their teammates. I think Status Quo could turn it up here, but Final Boss, obviously, still the best team in the game.
So who are you picking here?
I'm picking Final Boss. I'll agree with you. I think Final Boss will win this matchup, but Status Quo, definitely a team to look out for.
You know you're agreeing with me because you know what I'm going to say, and that's that Final Boss is just too strong here. SQ, we love you, but they're never going to get higher than the 3rd place, in my opinion. Final Boss, they're looking too strong here. I think they're the favorite to win this event. I have them advancing for sure in this matchup.
Well, the argument that I have is that Final Boss and Status Quo really haven't played each other for a long time, Puckett.
6-team LAN,
and
2 days ago.
Hey, no, you're right. You're right about that. But I'm talking about in tournament, they haven't played for quite a long time. And if there's an upset that's going to happen, If Final Boss is unfamiliar with somebody's playstyle, it's going to be status quos.
So, am I agreeing with both of you, or am I agreeing with Puckett?
No, you could agree with both of us.
All right, so Final Boss is stacked. That's bottom line. That's what I was actually going to say. Anyway, so this will be the end of Status Quo's journey in the winner's bracket. So looking at our second matchup in round 2, we have Triggers Down versus Instinct. We saw this one go to 5 games in DC, where Triggers Down edged them out by a couple kills to win the series. But what are we going to see in Dallas?
Well, Shibby, when you look at these two teams, you look at Triggers Down, who's been slowly improving all season as the season has gone on, showing their most impressive performance in DC just a couple weeks ago. And when you look at Instinct, they've been on a slow decline as the season has gone on, showing their most impressive performance in the beginning of this season at our opener. So, when I'm looking at both of these teams, I think I basically put them at an even level playing field now, and I'm going to give Triggers Down this matchup. I think the way they played, they have confidence now after playing the way they did in DC. I think after this 16 land, they'll be ready to go. Triggers Down is going to win this in a very close matchup.
All right, I let you say your piece, and now I'm going to destroy you. All right, Triggers Down improved over the course of this season because they made great pickups. They got Tots, then they got Best Man, now they're a complete team. Instinct, you say they're on a slow decline. They went from first to first to second to 7th after having a rough time in the losers bracket in DC. I don't think they took it very seriously. But look at this. When Triggers Down was playing their best this entire season, that was Saturday night. They took Instinct to Game 5. They edged them out by less than 5 kills here. You got to be honest with yourself. Instinct is the stronger team. They're the more consistent team. Instinct will win this matchup. Triggers Down, if they pull off the upset again, I won't be extremely surprised, but if you're a betting man, don't you dare put your money on TD, because Instinct's going to take it.
Wow, this one was actually a toss-up for me. And I had a tough time with this matchup, but based on their performances throughout the season and having multiple MVPs on their team, you know what's coming. Instinct. I got to go with Instinct. Based on those facts alone, I got to go with Instinct here.
I understand.
So, guys, with most of the bracket done, we're left with the match that matters the most, the winner's bracket finals. And it's a familiar matchup, one that we've seen almost every single bracket show. Final Boss and Instinct.
That's right, Shibby, and we can't wait for this matchup. Dmaq, we gotta love it.
Absolutely.
We go with the number 1 and the number 2 team for a reason. It's because they're the 2 best teams in the league. But I gotta go with Final Boss here. Ogre 2 called it back in Raleigh after they won that event. They are gonna win the 50, the 51st in DC, and the 52nd in Dallas at our national championships. I believed it after Raleigh. I believed it after they won in DC, and I definitely believe it now. I think Final Boss, too strong. Their teamwork looked perfect in DC, especially on Sunday. I think if they bring their A game, if they bring their B+ game, they'll still beat Instinct here.
At the national championships, huh?
At the national championships.
They could bring their B+ game. Shibby, when you looked at how they played in DC, absolutely incredible Halo, battling back from the losers bracket. And just to give an ode to Final Boss, winning the first Halo 3 event ever, then going stagnant for years and coming back, Ogre 2 battling back, making sure he'd get back on top, winning the 50th, 51st, and I believe so, he's going to win the 52nd. Final Boss is going to win this event.
All right, so there you have it. Our experts picked Final Boss to win the winner's bracket finals at our national championships. Make sure you tune in to MLGpro.com between November 5th and the 7th to find out how the bracket plays out in Dallas. For Dmaq and Chris Puckett, I'm Shibby. Good night.